Those who refuse the gift of eternal life are condemned to wander in the darkness of eternal night. Coming this fall from SJS Direct. Last weekend, we had a shooting here in New York where a 1-year-old baby wound up losing his life. And as I take a critical examination of this murder of this 1-year-old boy, I have to ask a critical question. Where was Black Lives Matter? Now, your Black Lives Matter is an organization that says it's all about preserving black life. And your Black Lives Matter seems to have some sort of cognitive dissonance as related to its mission. That can be seen in their website, and it can also be seen in their actions, because your Black Lives Matter, it can go down to Fifth Avenue to help your mayor, Bill de Blasio, paint a sign on the street of Fifth Avenue in front of Trump Tower saying Black Lives Matter, but we won't see any of these representatives of Black Lives Matter coming to Bedford-Stuyvesant in Brooklyn, where this 1-year-old lost their life, looking to wage a march in your Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn, to educate these black people on the value of black life. Nor will we see anybody from Black Lives Matter looking to paint a mural on the street of Bedford-Stuyvesant to send a message to all of the thugs, all of the gang members, all of the Pookies, and all of the Ray Rays that their lives matter, because your Black Lives Matter buys into the concept of white supremacy. And your Black Lives Matter buys into that concept of white supremacy because it only believes a black life has value only as related to the attention it can receive from white people. Because when you look at their actions of Black Lives Matter, they only come out when a black man loses his life to a white police officer, a white suburban commando like Ahmaud Arbery lost his life, or a white race soldier, or one of these situations altogether. That's the only time you'll see Black Lives Matter and their woke far-left supporters coming out to organize a protest. They will protest the life of a black man and use his casket as a stepping stone in order to push their agenda. And it's clear that their agenda is not about empowering black people to understand the value of their own lives. No, their agenda is about seeking white validation and white approval. Because here in New York, we have had 16 shootings over the last weekend, and most of those shootings were predominantly black on black shootings, like the one at the Cookout here in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, where this 1-year-old child wound up losing his life. But we didn't see anybody from Black Lives Matter looking to wage that campaign with the same passion and the same fervor. No, we get nothing but silence from them as related to the 1-year-old that lost their life this week and the children who lost their lives last week. Nothing but silence on them as related to Black Life Mattering. But these incidents go on, and I'm seeing some sort of cognitive dissonance on this issue of Black Life Mattering to Black Lives Matter, because they can only see a value in a black life taken by a white or a non-black, but they can't see a value in a life taken by a black man or a black woman who is terrorizing the black community. Because as I see it, your suburban commando beta males, your race soldier police officers, are no different than your thug or your gangbanger, and both of them have the same fascist agenda of exterminating any black person who does not fit their narrative or their agenda. And in their world, in both their worlds, the only black person who is good for them is a dead black person. But one has a viewpoint of white supremacy. Well, both of them have a viewpoint of white supremacy. But the black individual has, in addition to white supremacy, the brainwashing of self-hatred. And if Black Lives Matter was a serious and genuine organization, they would be focused on dealing with the self-hatred of black men and black women. But when you look at the mission of Black Lives Matter, you don't see anything there in their mission statement about educating young brothers and sisters on black self-hatred and how black self-hatred leads to you minimizing the value of black life. Because the core foundation of your black person seeing no value in another person's black life is this self-hatred. And this self-hatred comes from a place of believing in the concepts of white supremacy and believing that white life has a higher value than black life. And that is something you can see in the actions of Black Lives Matter, because they only see a value in the death of a black man when he has lost his life at the hands of a white man or a non-black man. And they use that black man's death and use his casket as a stepping stone in order to get the attention and the approval of the white people they want to get involved with. And that just shows how macabre your Black Lives Matter is and how depraved they are as related to getting this attention from white people. I mean, they just don't care about black men's lives, while you have young black boys and young black men shooting it out here in cities like New York, escalating violence back to the levels I haven't seen since the late 80s when I was a teenager and the early 90s. Your Black Lives Matter remains silent on these issues, and they remain silent on these issues as related to black on black shootings, only seeing a value in one group of shootings, but not seeing a value in another, because those black people losing their lives at the hands of other black people do not fit their narrative, and they can't get attention for themselves with white woke leftist supporters, and they can't get photo ops with those leftist supporters in things like empty symbolic gestures like painting Black Lives Matter murals on the street of Fifth Avenue in front of Trump Tower. How does that show Black life mattering for black people? I mean, that's a critical question I'd like to ask some people out there as related to Black Lives Matter. How does painting this mural help the young brothers and sisters get an education into learning how to value black life and understanding the core foundation of valuing black life, which is black self-love? Black self-love is the only way to see a value in another black man's life. Black self-love teaches you that someone who looks like you is beautiful, somebody like you has value, and someone who looks like you has a right to have a life just like you. And this is a lesson that many in the black community haven't learned, because many in the black community are caught up in white supremacy. And just like I talked about in my novel, Spellbound, many of these spellbound individuals, they are trying to fit into the box that is acceptable to white people. And because they're trying to fit into this black box that is acceptable to white people, they want to fit into one of these stereotype roles, whether it be the hood rat, whether it be the baby mom, whether it be the thug. And they want to fit into that world because they feel like this is the only way they'll be accepted by whites. But that just shows how caught up in the self-hatred they are, because if black life mattered to black people, then we wouldn't see black people shooting other black people now that they have gotten many of the tools that they demanded, like out in the aftermath of the case of the suicide of Khalif Browder. We had many black people demanding bail reform, and once we got the bail reform, many of these young black males and females started to escalate the crimes they were committing instead of taking the opportunity given to them to show that this so-called excessive bail was not needed. They prove many of these racist exact same points with their actions by going out here and committing more crimes, terrorizing their own black community. And many of the individuals who were released from Rikers Island after getting this COVID-19, and the COVID-19 pandemic also escalated this. And then you had many of these young black males and females who just are wilding out because they just feel like they have nothing to do. Again, you have all of these opportunities at freedom to show how you can value black life by going out here and building a business, going out here and working on yourself, going out here and using the tools in front of you like the internet to do some research on some sort of ventures, do something like start a YouTube channel, do something positive with your life. Instead, we have your Pookies and Ray Rays. What they're doing out here is terrorizing their communities and destroying the quality of life people took 30 years to build. And many of these people, again, who are participating in this escalation in shootings, they don't know how bad things were 30 years ago. As a guy who grew up 30 years ago in the worst era of New York history, the crack epidemic, when I saw that story with that 1-year-old who lost their life at the hands of one group of thugs shooting at another group of thugs at a cookout, it took me back to that dark period when we had the crack epidemic and black people had devalued life to the point where they saw a black person in the same way they would see a roach, and they would just go and kill another black person simply for looking at them or simply looking at a girl that they liked or a pair of shoes or just even wearing a pair of sneakers that they bought. These people did not regard black life, and they were so caught up in the false power they had during this crack epidemic. All they thought about was participating in wanton mayhem. And if you had to live in that era around that type of terrorism, you knew that you couldn't even go outside during the day because these urban terrorists practically roamed the streets throughout the day, and they even got out even worse at night. I mean, these people, once they took power in the neighborhood, they practically terrorized people in the neighborhood. But the Black Lives Matter doesn't want to protest against these guys. Instead, they want to tell us that they're victims, instead of telling them they need to take responsibility. And that was one of the messages that I found to be interesting in an ABC News report I was watching. At least some of the people I saw were getting an epiphany as related to Black Lives Matter and their hypocrisy, and they were also further reflecting on themselves. I mean, one of the reports I was watching, one of the relatives of this 1-year-old boy who lost his life, he said, how does this show Black Life Mattering if we're killing ourselves? And he said that we are the problem. And this is something a lot of black people don't want to look at, is us being part of the problem. They want to look at whites and non-blacks and the violence they participate in a group of black people, especially black men. And yes, we do need to look at these race soldiers and suburban commandos and hold them accountable for the murders and lynchings that they participate in of black men. But we also have to hold your beta male, Pookies, Ray Rays, thugs, and gang members to the same standard and punish them to the same standard, because these beta male thugs and gang members are just as bad as your race soldiers, In fact, they are nothing more than chocolate race soldiers and chocolate urban terrorists and chocolate Klansmen looking to harm our best and brightest black people and hold our communities hostage and turn our communities into a fiefdom that benefits white supremacy. Because as long as you have these thugs and terrorists terrorizing the black community, it cannot compete in a world, because white supremacy gets benefits when our best and brightest are gunned down in the street, when our best and brightest are aborted, when our best and brightest are cut down in the prime of their lives. White supremacy gets a benefit because these people do not go out and build and improve the quality of life in the black community. These people do not go out here and change the standard in the black community. And as I stated in my book, The Man Crisis, these black males, they keep the neighborhood in a state of poverty, and they keep it in a gynocentric fiefdom where the females can maintain control. And these individuals, the whole thing is, we're allowing them to come back to power because we don't understand the importance of black life, and we don't understand the importance of black men's lives, because if black men want to show how much a black man's life matters to them, the best thing they could ever do is learn how to walk away from another black man in a disagreement or an argument. Because if you value your life, you're not going to want to do harm to another person, because a man who loves himself, what he's going to do is he's going to say, okay, I have a disagreement with this man, but I understand that my life has value, and because my life has value, I'm not going to put my life and my intangibles of manhood at risk, like my health, my safety, and most importantly, my freedom to go out here and so-called get back at a man emotionally, because the whole point of calling yourself to get back at someone with 9 millimeters of courage is coming from a very feminine and very emotional perspective. And getting back at that man may take his life, but it's also going to cost you your life, and it's going to cost you years of your health when you're in this prison system, years of your safety, because you put in your safety at risk being in this prison system, of being sodomized and having your tight end turned into a wide receiver, and possibly getting shanked in that prison system. And again, you lose your freedom all for a couple of seconds of feeling, and that's what many of these shootings are all about. These guys being caught up in their feelings about something somebody did or said, and not thinking about the bigger picture as related to their future, and understanding that black life mattering has to start with the black man and the black woman loving themselves in order to know how to walk away from conflict. But I look at the big picture of Black Lives Matter, and they're not teaching these lessons to brothers and sisters out here, because if black life mattered to them, they would be on an education campaign to teach at these shootings the value of black life, holding rallies to teach black love and black self-love to young brothers and sisters out here, and to teach them that every black life has to matter to us, and we have to send that message of our life valuing in our own communities before we can start going out to march and protest to other communities. Because if it doesn't matter to us, how can we tell other people this? And that's the whole hypocrisy of Black Lives Matter as I see it. They'll march and protest to get brownie points with white people, but they won't march and protest with the same fervor and passion for other black people who are attacked by other black people, nor will they send a message to deal with people who are doing harm to black people. And that's what we need in these black communities where we've seen this escalation in shootings and gun violence. We need people to go out here and teach other black people black self-love, black pride, and teach them these messages of not harming your fellow brother and doing unto your brother as you would want done unto you. And we need to get this mop out of our own eye in the black community before we can go out here and focus on an agenda as related to cleaning up the black community. If you'd like to learn more about the dysfunctional behaviors of gang members and other predatory beta males who terrorize black communities, you can pick up my book, The Man Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle formats. You can also find The Man Crisis on Amazon.com, not on Amazon.com, but you can find it on Smashwords, the iBookstore, and Google Play. And if you want to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the link in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, The Temptation of John Haynes. Given to temptation, pick up this action-packed African-American paranormal romance. Get The Temptation of John Haynes in paperback and